for me, the PhD was really the process of transformation to really validate my skills in research and the idea of be part of the community. So that sense of purpose, the part of the community of researchers, to have that network, to have the research validated, that was very important. To have the discipline to go through the PhD. So all of that really encapsulated what was the PhD for me, that process. And for me was a process of transformation, coming as an apprentice to the research process, at the end be part of the community. So that was important, yeah.
Yeah, for me, I think it was different when I started, it was different when I finished. Because when I started, I was teaching at the university
Which university?
Of Pristina in Kosovo, and I was trying to develop my research skills, get a PhD, and go on with the whole researcher, i.e. lecturer kind of path. But then in the meantime, while doing the PhD, I ended up in this very different world of public policy and politics and things like that. So the moment when I've completed the PhD, I was doing something totally different. But what the PhD helped was that it sort of solidified that quest for method, for process, for looking at things more systematically, for looking at things differently than you do before. I think what a lot of people don't understand, that PhD is as much as about the method as about the content of what you're studying. And for me, that's something that I carried into whatever fields I've been doing. Of course, switching into a different career path posed some difficulties along the process, but now that it's over, I appreciate the whole experience of learning. And as Clovis says, becoming part of the community is also a very important path, it's a very important result of the whole PhD process. I think so. I think you get an insight as to how does this whole academic community and the process work. For example, if you come from a policy field and you're faced with some of the discussions you have when you present your research in academia, which can be ruthless, you get to see what the process is all about in this community. In other fields of public life, and including the fields of public policy, people are not that straightforward with their opinions and with their critique as they are in academia. So going from there to my other things that I've been doing, I always have a sympathy and I always have a sense of understanding for things that come from the academic world. But it also enables you to give to academia a different perspective, having in mind their perspective. Because, for example, while we were here, I would always tell them, of course, a lot of policy proposals that come from academia are great, but then they require 2 political mandates. And then a politician cannot think that long term, because for politicians, policy making is much shorter process. So for me, it was really a learning experience to have an insight on both worlds.
Yeah, I think we end up being this interface between policy and science.
Yeah.
We, before joining the PhD, was very close to the policy makers with policy advice and trying to bring that knowledge from science in the academia to the policy world and bringing back that perspective, what is important from the policy side to the science. But once you go through the process of the PhD, so then you become much more critical of this whole process, of what is coming out of science, of what are the really important questions from the policy side. So it gives you some much more clear perspective on how to act in this interface between science and policy. Yeah, I think that was a very important part of my path in the PhD. Was really I was interested in innovation. I had a background on engineering, and was over time realized that bringing technology to development settings, poor communities, was very important, but really didn't break that transformation, that you see going on in certain countries in Asia, rapid development. So that transformation really comes through innovation, technological change, and I was trying to understand what are the economics of that technological change and innovation. So, and my whole PhD was really linked to that process, on better understanding that process, and to understand the empirical regularities that you see, understanding how that works and what is the theory behind. So, and I was able to over time, as you mentioned before, we enter in a way at the end of the process is different. But I think that what remains constant throughout this process is that the quest is the same, the same objective from the beginning. This better understanding of how this works. In my case was how this innovation process works. And there was a lot of change, in personal change, moving from, was in Bangkok, moving to New York, different jobs within the same organization, but different jobs. But this whole path was the same idea of better understanding this process of innovation. I think that was what's important on that process there.
Yeah, I think I fully agree. I think for me, I was looking into how technology impacts the building of state institutions. So my interest was to look in a state building environment which is much more undefined than a modern state like we have come to believe in the West and in a lot of developing countries. I wanted to see how does technology impact the building of this state institution. So the quest was first to get all the information of a process like this, which wasn't easy because a lot of actors, foreign actors and so on and so forth. But the quest was also to show that technology and innovation, in one sense, is not a seamless actor, is not just a tool that you put in a process and then it works. It's also an actor that impacts the development of institutions. So that was the main quest of my PhD. But what was interesting and what is also challenging now with all these technological, innovative processes, and also tracking of them through the time, is that it changes so much. For example, at early days when I was doing the PhD, the technology in government and the usage of technology in government was in its early phases. It was a novelty. You had to look for cases. As time went by, it becomes mainstream. Today, technology is mainstream. It's still not understood properly as it wasn't understood back then, but it is mainstream. The investment is there, the hype is there. It used to be called e-government, it was called technology in public sector, now it's called AI in public sector. It will be called something different in a couple of years, but the phenomenon and the challenges of understanding the process are still there. And that was very fascinating when I was doing it. But I agree, the quest actually is the same over the time.
And at the end, the new technologies are coming. So the same things that you found in your PhD are applicable now with the new set of frontier technologies, right? It's the same thing. Yeah, the same with the process of innovation. Different countries are going through different stages of development. They go through the same process, even though the technology is different now. They have the new technologies, frontier technologies coming up. So it's interesting because we were some of the students of the GPAC that were doing on the technological side, because many of our colleagues were doing on the governance aspect. And I think that is a privilege to do our research on the area of economics of innovation, technology change in unu-merit that is
Yeah.
so well known for this research on economics of technological change and innovation.
Yeah, and if you remember our sessions here in Maastricht, what was always very fascinating to participate was that you would listen to so many perspectives from all over the world of people who are doing stuff. So it's not people who are just have read and wrote papers about it, but people who are really involved in the latest mainstream or
As part of their
novelty
jobs, basically.
as part of their job. So if you participated in the sessions here, you would hear so many new stuff and so many interesting stuff that would spark your sort of thinking beyond what you were thinking before you came. So I think one of the other elements that is very important to talk about is the friendship you create here, because some of these friendships sort of span the time of your PhD, and these people continue to be doing fascinating stuff all over the world. As you said, you were in Bangkok, New York, now in Geneva. I don't know if you remember Sebastian.
Yes.
He was doing cutthroat education stuff in Middle East, then moved to Argentina to do them. Of course, it was always fascinating to listen to the things that were being done. So I think for me that was also an important element of this process.
Yes, true. You mentioned that this community here is a community that is academic, very strong and solid, but also with a lot of knowledge and experience on the policy side.
Yeah.
So you listen to people that were in the development context, going to countries and advising policymakers, bringing their research to the context of the countries. It's really different from other places that you can do this kind of research.
Yeah.
Well, I think that I remember very fondly when I came for the first workshop with my cohort, and I really felt so honored, proud, privileged to be here with them. And I remember listening to alumni coming to here and sharing a little bit of their experience with us, and it was very important for me at that time. And I first would like to give that back again. I would like to share a little bit of that experience. And if you give me any opportunity to come back to Maastricht and to unu-merit to see friends here, I'll take it. So that's a double winning there. So it was a very easy call to say that I'll come to Maastricht. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's the same feeling. I believe that the part of us being researchers and academics, no matter what we do, is always with us. And I think when this whole academic community is based on the feeling of giving back, in terms of knowledge, in terms of sharing. So it's a great pleasure to be here and to whatever we can help the new cohorts, but also to stay in touch with the institutions and with the colleagues. I mentioned earlier, some of the friendships that you create during your PhD are as important as the PhD. And also, some of these friendships are also a big driver or a big push for you to progress on the PhD, because whoever has completed a PhD knows that there are some very dark times in the process that you need all the push you can get and the support that you have. So as Clovis says, it's always great to be back in Maastricht. It's always great to see the professors, the alumni, the colleagues, and why not to try and give back some of the experience and some of the lessons that we might have learned during the years we were here.